General Hospital spoilers tease that finally, the long, chaotic, convoluted, and controversial saga surrounding the character dubbed the worst of 2025 in General Hospital, Lucky Spencer, has come to an end, closing one of the most divisive and headache-inducing chapters in the show's recent history. During the brief return of Lucky to the screen, portrayed once again by Jonathan Jackson, instead of reigniting excitement or reviving the classic charm of the character, the show spiraled into illogical, uninspired storylines filled with choices that many critics felt betrayed the core essence of who Lucky was. What was initially seen as an opportunity to honor a legacy icon quickly became one of the year's most significant creative missteps, a failure both narratively and emotionally. Jonathan Jackson's official departure from the role not only marks a farewell to a legacy character but also signals the end of a chaotic, misguided, and disjointed streak of storytelling that the writers imposed on Lucky. Erratic behavior, incoherent relationships, and shallow twists transformed Lucky, once a symbol of inner struggle and redemption, into a faint, disconnected shadow within the world of Port Charles. From a rushed marriage proposal to Elizabeth to the bizarre desire for her to drop everything and wander with him, everything about Lucky's return felt alienating and frustrating to longtime viewers. Even his final twist, suggesting a summer trip with his son Aiden, was seen by many as an emotional patch job, unable to salvage a character so thoroughly dismantled by his own creators. And as Jackson exits, what audiences feel is not sorrow, but relief. Online sentiment has shifted from mourning a character's exit to sighs of gratitude that the chaos is over. Finally free from the nightmare that was Lucky 2025, just one of thousands of viewer comments. To some loyal fans, Lucky may still represent a golden age, but the show itself has warped that image beyond recognition. Yet, just as things seem to quiet down, a new shock is silently taking shape. Lucky's hasty departure, lacking meaningful closure with key characters, leaves a gaping hole in the current narrative structure of General Hospital. Subplots once revolving around Lucky, his unresolved dynamics with Elizabeth, his potential connection with Aiden, and even a possible reconnection with his mother, Laura, must now be shelved or completely rewritten. This forces the writing team to restructure their long-term plans, disrupting the steady narrative momentum and putting other characters into a state of suspended development. Jonathan Jackson's departure as Lucky is not just the end of a failed comeback, it's the collapse of hope, nostalgia, and misplaced trust. What remains is a bitter lesson in how not to revive a legacy character without a clear strategy. While executive producer Frank Valentini tries to stay positive, stating that the door is always open should Jonathan wish to return, the majority of viewers agree, without a complete overhaul in writing and a renewed respect for the character's essence. Any potential comeback, if it happens, would just repeat the same mistake in a different form. At a time when General Hospital is under pressure to retain its loyal fanbase, every misstep comes at the cost of trust and viewer loyalty. Letting Lucky spiral into a series of poor narrative choices is a clear warning bell. Even legacy icons can become burdens if not written properly. And now that the madness has ended, what remains is not emotion, but consequences the show must now grapple with in the coming months. Lucky is no longer just a character removed from the main current of General Hospital, he has become 2025's most persistent nightmare, a symbol of failure in legacy restoration, and the focal point of an ongoing narrative trauma. His abrupt withdrawal, marked by vague circumstances and a troubling silence from those around him, is fueling one of the show's largest fanbase controversies in years. From a character once synonymous with redemption arcs, Lucky has been swallowed by shallow writing decisions, disconnected interactions, and now, potentially, an unacknowledged death, with no farewell, no funeral, no official tears shed on screen. The story is no longer just about Lucky's exit. It has become a collective obsession, as viewers dissect every detail of recent episodes for clues pointing toward a chilling truth, that Lucky may already be dead, and that his death was not honored with any of the dignity his legacy deserved. Elizabeth, once everything to Lucky, now appears colder, with vacant stares and clipped words, as if hiding a grief that has no name. Laura remains uncharacteristically silent, never mentioning her son, a glaring contradiction for a mother who once fought to the death for her children. Lulu, despite being in a vegetative state, is cited by fans as someone whose absence in this arc is conspicuously illogical. And Aiden, the child who hoped for a summer adventure with his father, is left with nothing but emptiness. There was no goodbye. No departure announcement. No final sighting of Lucky. What remains are heavy glances, awkward silences, and quiet moments that longtime viewers immediately sense are off. Finn casually mentions someone no longer within the family's embrace, while Valentine wistfully stares at an old photo of Lucky in Laura's office. Nicholas, with his complicated history with his half-brother, becomes evasive when asked about the days ahead. Spencer suddenly cancels his trip to Europe without any clear reason. These disjointed fragments are forming a grim picture. Lucky is dead. Not a heroic death. Not a tragic accident. But a cruel, silent vanishing, buried behind the scenes as if he never existed. This has triggered one of General Hospital's biggest shocks in recent years, not because of loss, but because of betrayal. Viewers can't stop asking, why would a character like Lucky be erased in such a disgraceful manner? Is it the result of audience backlash to his underwhelming return? Or a behind-the-scenes decision to eliminate a character no longer fitting the show's new direction? Whatever the reason, one fact remains: if this departure is permanent, it is fueling widespread outrage and disappointment. This is no longer the grief of losing a character, it's the shock of indifference, of how a piece of legacy was discarded without explanation. Lucky's disappearance is no longer a plot point, it is now a whispered mystery in the fan community, an emotional haunting for those who once believed in his journey of redemption and growth. Flashbacks are omitted. Final scenes with Elizabeth are mysteriously shortened. No one in Port Charles has said his name in over 2 weeks. It's become clear. He wasn't just written off, he may have been erased from the collective memory the show once built. A death not named, yet present like a ghost haunting every Spencer family scene. And that is the most disturbing part of all. Not that Lucky has died, but that he was allowed to disappear as if he were never an important part of Port Charles. With every new episode, fans still hope for a sign, a confirmation, a belated goodbye to close Lucky's story with some semblance of dignity. But when that moment doesn't come, the silence becomes the cruelest declaration of all. Lucky is gone. No more chances. No redemption. And though Port Charles continues with new relationships and schemes, it does so carrying a quiet, gaping wound that may never heal. An unconfirmed death. But a shock that is already permanent. Lucky's rejected proposal by Liz wasn't merely a moment of personal heartbreak, it became the epicenter of one of the most unhinged developments currently erupting in General Hospital. That moment of refusal was no longer just a private exchange between two people who once loved each other deeply. It marked the beginning of a downward spiral, an uncontrollable chain of obsession and unraveling that has left longtime viewers stunned at how far a once hopeful, redemptive character has fallen. From a man returning to Port Charles with dreams of repairing a past love, Lucky is now the face of failure, of misalignment, misguided choices, and escalating missteps. This unraveling is triggering not only emotional backlash but also structural disruption within the show's narrative. Liz's rejection wasn't just a rational personal decision, it set off a chain reaction. Instead of retreating to heal, Lucky hurled himself into other chaotic corners of the show. Most notably an increasingly obsessive fixation on Christina. In what many view as a bizarre pivot by the writers. Lucky began monitoring and interfering in Christina's life, a woman on her own journey of self-liberation and personal autonomy. What started as coincidental conversations soon morphed into controlling behavior, questioning her lifestyle, her job, her relationships, as if he were clinging to something, anything, to soothe the sting of being rejected and abandoned. This shift has left viewers deeply unsettled. Why has Lucky been steered so drastically off course? He is no longer the father seeking redemption with his son. No longer the conflicted ex-lover. Lucky is now spiraling into a portrait of a man so wounded, so consumed, he's losing grip on reality. His growing obsession with Christina, someone with whom he has little meaningful history, appears less about connection and more about control, a desperate attempt to reclaim a sense of power. It's not just disturbing, it's derailing. Lucky is being written as someone unfamiliar even to himself. A legacy character reduced to self-destruction just to stay visible. This latest trajectory, from Liz's refusal to his fixation on Christina, makes one thing painfully clear. The show no longer knows what to do with Lucky. He no longer fits the core storylines. He lacks meaningful ties to the main cast. Every move he makes only deepens the image of an unstable outsider. Unwelcome in the world he once anchored. Lucky's very existence has become a haunting presence, not because of what he does, but because of how he's being distorted to fit increasingly irrational scripts. His shadow darkens not due to frequent appearances, but because every scene he's in makes viewers uneasy, never knowing what disturbing turn might come next. The question now isn't, what will Lucky do next, but rather, why did the show allow a character once so rich in depth to become this? Liz's rejection might have been understandable, but Lucky's reaction, losing control, invading Christina's personal space, and descending into obsession, has left viewers anxious. Not just for the safety of those around him, but because a symbol of hope and humanity is being dismantled beyond recognition. And that is the true shock. Not that Lucky was rejected. Not that he was pushed out of the main storyline. But that General Hospital is, with its own hands, destroying layer by layer the memory viewers once cherished of him. The Lucky who suffered, who grew from his pain, who loved with all his heart, is now written as a stalker, a manipulator, and an icon of creative downfall. His story is no longer one of redemption, it's a scar. A warning of how even the most trusted can be reshaped into something unrecognizable. Now, the chaos enveloping Port Charles reaches a deeper, darker level as Lucky, once a symbol of redemption and hope, becomes the next target in Ava's growing web of sinister ambition. The name Lucky, once synonymous with pain and perseverance, is now entangled in one of the show's most disturbing narrative shifts. As whispers of Lucky's possible death begin to spread throughout the town. No one expected that Ava, master of exploiting emotional weaknesses, would be the one to uncover the truth and weaponize it for her own gain. Ava's sudden pivot isn't just a personal plot twist, it's a clear signal that Port Charles itself is unraveling. Lucky's death, never confirmed in dialogue or on-screen visuals, becomes more tangible with each silent expression from those who once loved him. Liz, who turned down Lucky's final proposal, no longer appears as the rational, strong woman she once was. Now she exists in a muted fog, haunted eyes, regretful gestures, and unspoken sorrow. Aiden, the boy who once dreamed of a magical summer with his father, now sits in his art room, tearing up the drawings he once made for Lucky. The cruelty of death lies not just in absence, but in the theft of moments that never had the chance to exist. Amid this emotional fog, Ava moves like a quiet storm. She seizes on Liz's fragility, Aiden's emotional wounds, and the confusion blanketing the rest of the town. Ava doesn't need the full truth to manipulate it. All it takes is a fragment of a rumor, a hushed theory about the cause of Lucky's death. Maybe involving an underground force or a secret he carried to the grave, and Ava twists it into leverage for her ambitions. She starts showing up more frequently around Laura, sidling closer to Nicholas, poking at cracks everyone assumed she'd long abandoned. From the shadows, Ava crafts a world where Lucky's death isn't just personal grief, it's a catalyst for a master plan. Every beat in this unfolding arc feels deliberate. Character behavior shifts. Small changes begin to reveal that Lucky's death is being positioned as the center of a new, devastating storm. Liz, despite her poise, is emotionally unraveling. Aiden exhibits troubling behaviors, skipping school, sudden emotional outbursts, suggesting that the truth is eating away at his innocence. And Ava, unlike anyone else, quietly connects the emotional wreckage, not to heal it, but to control it. What makes this twist so profoundly unsettling is its ambiguity. Lucky's death isn't mourned. It isn't confirmed. It has no narrative anchor, just silence, sadness, and avoidance. Ava understands this. And in that void, she finds power. One well-timed lie can shake an entire truth. And Ava now holds that moment. Is she staging a fake death to cover something bigger? Or has she uncovered the real cause of Lucky's disappearance, a truth capable of destroying everyone he left behind? No one knows. But one thing is certain. Port Charles is no longer the same. A man who once carried light and redemption has now become the foundation of a new, haunting descent. Liz has lost her emotional compass. Aiden is silently collapsing. And Ava, once again, proves that in a world where truth is endlessly manipulated, emotional control is the greatest power. And Lucky, though gone, is now the center of a new storm. No longer a hero. No longer a father. But a manipulated memory. A twisted truth. This is no longer a story of death. It's the beginning of a new nightmare, where the lines between right and wrong, love and manipulation, memory and control, are warped by Ava in ways only she dares to pursue. And Lucky, though disappeared, is still trapped in Port Charles's most merciless game. The truth is fracturing by the day, as the name Lucky, once a symbol of inner struggle, of relentless attempts at redemption and protection of family, has now become the center of a silent yet brutal power struggle more devastating than any storm Port Charles has ever faced. As vague signs of Lucky's death begin to surface, through scattered details, sidelong glances, and an eerie silence from his closest loved ones, Laura can no longer stand by. With the instincts of a mother who has lived through too much loss, she knows something deeper is unfolding, something far beyond a quiet departure of a son. And if someone is using that ambiguity to reshape the truth, to seize what was never theirs, Laura will be the first to stand in their way. But Laura isn't alone. Sonny, a man with a history written in both blood and loyalty, is the perfect ally to fight beside her. His relationship with the Spencer family, especially with Lucky, hasn't always been smooth. But it has always been rooted in respect, honor, and a shared sense of duty. So when Laura comes to Sonny and confides in him her deepest fears, about Lucky's financial interests, a possibly forged will, and, above all, about Ava, Sonny immediately understands this isn't just about protecting a name. It's about preserving the truth before it is twisted beyond recognition. Ava, smart, sharp, and always aware of how to exploit human weakness, has long lurked in the shadows, not to hide but to watch, to wait for the moment when everyone else lowers their guard. While Laura and Elizabeth drown in grief, while Aiden spirals in confusion over a father's death that no one will confirm, Ava starts to move. She doesn't need confirmation. She doesn't need Lucky's death to be officially declared. All she needs is silence. And in that silence, she plants doubt. She fans the flames of inheritance disputes. And she quietly begins to slide into territories that once belonged to Lucky. Ava starts showing up at meetings concerning family trusts, questioning Lucky's financial oversight. And even forges a series of legal documents under the pretense of representing a potential investor interested in the Spencer estate. With a deft hand for emotional manipulation and a keen understanding of legal loopholes. Ava doesn't need to launch a frontal assault, she only needs to sow enough suspicion to turn allies against one another. A few whispers. A few conveniently vague legal memos. A few nods from ambiguous attorneys. And suddenly, a new version of Lucky begins to emerge. A reckless Lucky. An unstable Lucky. A man possibly drowning in secret debt or spiraling out of control before he vanished. Laura, catching wind of these moves, knows that if she doesn't act quickly, Lucky's legacy, both emotional and material, will be completely rewritten by someone who never loved him, who only sees value in the vacuum he left behind. She gathers every document, wills, bank accounts, financial authorizations, and with Sonny's help, begins to track every money transfer, every suspicious signature. Sonny, leveraging his own underground resources, uncovers a disturbing trail. At least 3 accounts in Lucky's name were accessed after his disappearance, one of which was funneled into a financial intermediary loosely connected to Ava. Meanwhile, Liz is struggling to stay composed for Aiden, but she is unraveling. The look in her son's eyes. The simple question, is Dad really not coming back? The growing signs of obsession in his smallest gestures. All of it sends Liz into a spiral of guilt. She begins to wonder if rejecting Lucky's proposal was the final blow that pushed him over the edge. And as whispers of his disappearance intensify, Liz realizes that it's not just her emotions that are under attack, but everything Lucky ever tried to protect, his legacy, his memory, and above all, Aiden. Port Charles is becoming a battlefield. On one side, Laura and Sonny, representing justice, truth, and the preservation of memory. On the other, Ava, representing power, manipulation, and unstoppable ambition. And in the middle lies what remains of Lucky, a man no longer able to defend himself, a name now treated like an unclaimed inheritance. But this isn't just a fight over money. This is a war between memory and lies. Between truth and control. Between those who still love, and those who only see opportunity. And what's most terrifying is that the greatest weapon in this war is the ambiguity itself. Lucky's death, unconfirmed, unwitnessed, without a funeral, is becoming a tool of distortion. A ghost story twisted to erase the man he truly was. And in this nightmare that refuses to end, the ones who suffer most aren't just Laura, Liz, or Aiden. It's the audience. The ones who once loved Lucky. The ones now forced to watch helplessly as a beloved character is consumed by the darkest political games General Hospital has ever dared to play.